Hi, my name is Felix, and I'm a cis girl that used to be a fan of Calvin Garrah. I'm seeing a lot of content, especially from commentary channels, about how harmful Calvin's content has been to the trans community. And as a cis person, sorry, my script right here. As a cis person, I wanted to share my experience with Calvin's content and how it shaped my relationship with the community and how that relationship has changed. So before I found Calvin's content, I had my own few years of grappling with my identity, especially when I was 13 to 14, which is when I think a lot of young people tend to experiment with labels and stuff. I remember trying stuff on to see how it fit, but they never stuck for long because it wasn't me. For example, I called myself asexual for a while, which could not be farther from the truth if you know me in real life. But this is to say that I wasn't unfamiliar with a lot of the things that Calvin clearly seems to dislike, basically nonconformity. So Calvin wasn't my first introduction to the trans community, but his ideas definitely defined my ideas of trans people for a long time. So I was introduced to Calvin the way many people were. The video he made on a YouTuber named Brennan, which is the one I actually watched and inspired me to make this one, called Trans Guy Reacts to Crazy Trans Trender. And if you don't know, trans trender is the way Calvin talks about people who he says are calling themselves trans for attention, trans trenders, because they see being trans as a trend. And this label Calvin uses pretty often to discredit people that don't fit his idea of trans people. As Calvin was a trans guy, I took him as an authority on the subject. Because as a cis girl, I wanted to find a source of information about the trans community that I could trust. So I turned to Calvin because I think he's one of the most prominent trans YouTubers besides Blair White, but that's a whole nother can of worms. And Calvin as a person, I think, appeals to a lot of people's ingrained transphobic ideas. First of all, he's very passing. He looks like a cis guy if you didn't know he was trans. And he also tends to choose people who are very gender nonconforming to point and laugh at, basically, make his videos on. When Calvin and the person he is mocking are on the screen together, he's drawing a dichotomy between the two. He's saying, I am a masculine trans guy. This person is a nonconforming, gender nonconforming, maybe a little bit more effeminate of a trans guy. And what he's saying is, I am trans, this person is not. By calling them a trans trender, whoever it is, he's invalidating the identity of the person he's mocking and pitting his cis audience against any trans person that doesn't look, act, and behave like him. Calvin appealed to a lot of my ingrained transphobic ideas. It was really easy for me to join him in pointing and laughing at another trans person because I could understand him, I could understand how he presented, I could understand how he thought, because he explains himself in a pretty forceful way. It's hard to miss the point when you're listening to one of his videos. So it was really easy for me to kind of be on his side. It's really easy for people to alienate people that they don't understand, and Calvin really capitalizes on that when he's appealing to a cis audience. He puts someone on the screen that doesn't subscribe to traditional roles, whether that be gender or whatever, and basically he's like, look, this person isn't something you understand. Let's mock it instead of trying to understand it. I think a lot of Calvin's content is just that, just mocking something you don't understand. And the way that he does that, it doesn't encourage his cis audience to learn more about non-binary people, gender non-conforming people. All he says is, if this person doesn't look or present like me or Blair White, then they're not trans. Basically, it was really easy for me to join him in mocking and ridiculing people that didn't look like him because he pointed out that the people that he was mocking looked a little bit outlandish or unlike other people that you see normally, like when you're walking down the street. Because I could look at him and I could think, yes, he fits my societal expectations, I trust him. But the thing is, Calvin's views are, he's a cyberbully. He's genuinely a cyberbully. Wikipedia defines cyberbully as a person who habitually seeks to harm or intimidate those whom they perceive as vulnerable. And Brennan, the person Calvin made his I think it's his most viewed video, or maybe it was at the time, but it was a very highly viewed video, very popular. He made it on a person with a much smaller platform than him. And he's continued to do this with other trans people, transgenders he's chosen to mock. He picks someone with a much smaller audience, smaller sub count, and while people might say that there's less power dynamics on the internet because it's not in person, there's definitely a power dynamic that comes with someone who has 100K subscribers as opposed to 5K. So, bully is a person who habitually seeks to harm or intimidate those whom they perceive as vulnerable. There was a power dynamic there. Brennan was more vulnerable. Kalvin had a bigger audience, and he weaponizes that audience. He may not explicitly say, like, go harass this person and make them want to, like, but that's what happened. I think Brennan said that thousands of people ended up commenting on their video, telling them horrible, horrible things, invalidating them, mocking them. And one of the things that stood out in Kalvin's video is when he makes fun of Brennan's weight. He makes a comment about Brennan's body, not explicitly, but the subtext is very clear. And when you're trying to, I don't want to say critique someone's gender identity, because I don't think it's possible to critique someone's, like, identity. That's their identity, however they define it. The things that he chose to point out about Brennan were not even relevant to the fact that they were trans. A lot of his content about trans people is just, he's just mocking them. He's ridiculing people who don't look like him because he can. Because he knows that cis people will join him. He's not preaching tolerance. And what happened was Brennan got basically cyberbullied off the internet because of Kalvin's fans. He has a very active fan base. I think they call themselves, I'm not sure, something night. They have like the cross sword in their bio, whatever. Yeah, and Kalvin never took accountability for that. He is literally a cyberbully. I think he also misgenders Brennan in that video, which is not okay. You should never misgender someone, even if you don't agree with their gender identity. That's not okay. That's a fundamental disrespect and should never happen. And for someone like Kalvin with such a large audience to do that to someone, it just allows cis people to do that to trans people. What Kalvin does is he sets an example for how trans people should be treated, regardless of whether they're like really trans or not. He sets an example that allows his cis audience to then go and disrespect other trans people, whether it be online, in real life. He enables transphobia. He enables gatekeeping of the trans community by setting these very, very narrow guidelines for what a trans person can be. And this whole thing with picking a smaller channel and just tearing them to shreds in a video did not just happen once. Kalvin made it his thing after his video about Brennan kind of blew up. He did a lot of videos on transgenders, and I remember watching every single one and thinking, oh my god, these people are ridiculous. What Kalvin does is he creates a really intolerant space that doesn't allow for any experimentation. It traps people in even smaller boxes. And I can attest to how suffocating that must be, because I'm a cis girl. I wasn't questioning my gender identity when I was watching Kalvin's videos, but I've seen a lot of trans people talk about how they kind of backed themselves into a corner watching Kalvin's videos because they didn't fit the expectations that Kalvin was setting for trans people. So in that way, Kalvin is really hurtful to the community that he is a part of and he's claiming to protect, because Kalvin says that by like weeding out these trans trenders, he's making the trans community more legitimate in a way. So by digesting a lot of his content, inevitably I internalized a lot of it, and it just added to more of my transphobia. I became a lot less tolerant of trans people, and it really impacted the relationships I had with trans people, the ones that I thought didn't fit Kalvin's mold. Non-conforming trans people, I was like, is that person trans enough? And the fundamental problem with that is that I'm a cis person. I am not trans. I do not get to dictate anyone else's gender experience. That is not my place, and it should never be my place. But by setting that example for his cis audience, Calvin enables cis people to gatekeep a community that they are not even part of. So, being a fan of Calvin's videos made it seem as though I had the authority to question other people's identities, decide who was and wasn't really trans, pass judgment on a community that I was not part of, and perpetuate trans stereotypes of who can be trans and who isn't based on the examples Calvin himself set with who he chose to mock. For example, when he was mocking Brennan in his video, he was basically saying, "This person and anyone who looks like them is not trans. I am trans." In short, he enforced my own transphobic ideas to an intolerant and unacceptable degree. And I am not the only person who is influenced by this. I had friends that watched Calvin's videos. We talked about them together, and we ranted about how ridiculous the trans trenders in the videos were. He's having a large-scale impact on his cis audience, and he's just enabling the gatekeeping. There's already a lot of gatekeeping in the trans community, but he's just perpetuating that through a mouthpiece of cis people who shouldn't even be part of the conversation in the first place. I'm really ashamed to admit that I was ever a fan of Calvin and I ever subscribed to his rhetoric, and it's very humbling to realize as someone who thought of themselves as so progressive and #girlboss that I've been carrying around and perpetuating these really damaging stereotypes for years now. And the fact that I only realized it after seeing how deeply Calvin hurt other people is just, it's not okay. He needs to be held accountable for what he's done, and he hasn't been yet. I think the video was released 3 years ago, and I don't think he said anything. I think maybe recently he deleted it, but that's not enough. For the damage that he's caused, that is nowhere near enough. And the thing is, I was part of the silent minority of Calvin's fan base. A lot of the people that were harassed by him, they were harassed by his fan base. They went and they commented on these people's videos. Brennan deleted their channel, I think, and just completely disappeared from the internet because every video they made, not even the one that Calvin reacted to, was getting bombarded by hate and spam and disrespect. And I was nowhere near the worst of it, but that doesn't mean that what Calvin taught me and how I acted on it wasn't bad. But that's just to say that it got so much worse. It got so much worse. This is all to say that Calvin owes the people he's hurt an apology, and his cis audience needs to be held accountable too. His fan base owes the people they've harmed, who've left little comments and DMs, an apology. And I really sincerely hope that their views, since they've been a fan of Calvin, have developed and changed, and I hope they afford the trans community some more respect in the future. And that goes for me as well. I was part of this. Absolutely, 100%. Thank you for watching. This wasn't the most professional video. I know the lighting's changing through the whole thing. But I hope to maybe make more videos like this in the future. I think it's really fun. Not fun. I like being able to voice my opinion and hopefully change the opinions of other people. Thank you for watching. Bye.